After this session, you will get a link so that you can come back and watch the session later on, and there'll be recordings of all of the sessions for this week in the Vision VLE. So, down to today's session. We are absolutely delighted to have Graeme Butler here from Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Graeme is recruitment marketing specialist for Enterprise. And what that means is that he's in daily contact with graduates just like yourself, and working online, and sort of very aware of how people present themselves in the recruitment sphere. And I think even though we've been all working online for the last 15 months, there's still quite a lot of confusion about how we should be presenting ourselves online. And for yourselves graduating from university, there may well be a difference from that student presentation and that student use of social media and online functions into that professional world. So we know a lot of people are concerned and have questions about this. So we're delighted to have Graeme along today. So thanks very much, Graeme, and I'm going to hand over to you now.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. I mean, what a great introduction. I feel like you've kind of given the crux of my talk there anyway. So I could probably just take an hour back. But no, and first and foremost, absolutely delighted to be here on this rather grey Wednesday morning in Edinburgh today. So I think we can safely say that networking in person, we've all done it, is pretty hard. The majority of us feel the same way about networking as we often do about public speaking. Let's be honest, if you're like me, having to speak in public previously and up until more recently, it was pretty much just plain awkward. So I guess many of us have been in that position where we attend some kind of, it's either something from the university or it's a work-related event, and you see the dreaded words on the agenda, open networking. Yeah, we've all been there, and we've seen it, open networking or meet and greet or arrive early for a bit of networking. And I think more recently, in the last kind of year and a half, online is actually not getting any easier. We've all been there on some sort of online session. And have you actually noticed how those online silences on Zoom or Blackboard Collaborate or Teams, whatever platform, just seem to go on for an absolute eternity, don't they? They really do seem to go on far more longer than in person. So luckily, I'm here today to make things a little bit easier. My goal really for this session is for you to virtually walk away being able to think a little bit differently about networking. As the great introduction from Sarah said, my name is indeed Graeme, and my kind of job and role is to really help students launch careers in operations management with Enterprise, who are a Times Top 100 employer, where in short you can go from being a trainee to a store manager in as little as 2 years. We'll get onto that a little bit later, but you're here today to learn about the joys of networking, and I say it the joys because it really is. So with all my presentations, I like to keep them nice and to the point. We're going to cover just 3 key topics today. Firstly, we're going to look at, what's the point of networking at all? Why should I even have this on my agenda? Why is it even relevant to me at all? Then we're going to focus on how you can actually go about building a skill set in digital networking. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about mindset, as some of the other previous sessions have touched on as well. And that's where we're going to finish. Now, please do feel free if you would like to take notes throughout. As Sarah mentioned, this session is going to be recorded. I will also give you a really handy way of you to access the slides and the extended text from this session as well, so you can keep it as a reference point at the end. So if you'd like to take notes, please do. If you just want to sit back, as it is still quite early, I know at 9 o'clock, that is absolutely fine as well. It's more to generate, more really today to get you thinking about some things as opposed to overly collaborate, but of course we're happy to take any questions as we go. So folks, when it comes to the whole point of networking, most people, sorry, I've kind of skipped on there, most people fall into kind of one of 3 categories. How would you, if you were to sit down and think to yourself, how would you actually rate your networking ability? Some people would class themselves as a bit smug, like Sheldon on the left, 10 out of 10. Maybe you've got 10,000 LinkedIn connections. Most people would take the middle of the road kind of approach, 5 out of 10, and say, it's something I'm okay about. It's something that I don't mind. And then there's a lot of people who would class themselves as a 1 out of 10, do not like. You're also probably thinking that is the first time that I've seen a WWE wrestler, Beyonce and Sheldon, on the screen at the same time. You're welcome. So now Sheldon, as we know, is pretty smug. The irony here, though, is actually he would probably be one of the worst people when it comes to networking. As we know, he can be awkward at the best of times. On that note, a bit of a side note, I didn't actually realise how divisive The Big Bang Theory is as a TV show. I find it pretty inoffensive, but there's actually quite a lot of people who really dislike it. So just before we kind of go on, I just wanted to share with you the reason why I'm happy to talk to you about networking and digital networking as well. So long before digital networking was a thing, my first ever networking event I went to was in person. I was 21, just out of university. I just started working in recruitment, and my boss had asked me to go to this networking event, and I'd never been. Opened the door, was greeted by a room of it was all men in the room, and they were all far older than me, were power dressing in their full suits, and I kind of just had my first kind of suit out after university, and they took one look at me, laughed, turned around, and went back to their group, and I just kind of stood there, went bright red, didn't really know what to do. Pretended to be on my phone for about 20 minutes and then left, and it was embarrassing. So I've got a lot better, and there's some tips that I can share with you as to how I've got better at it, but it's coming from you from a place of someone who hasn't always been strong at networking, and certainly not at digital networking as well. So the first important part, and this really feeds into the theme of your wonderful week that you've got this week, what is the point of networking, and why should it even be on my agenda? So the first reason it absolutely has to be on your agenda is that being strong and effective at digital networking can really help you find a job. It's all very well in theory. You often hear this, you can use networking to find a job, but how do you actually do this in practice? Because networking is one of those words that gets bandied around a lot, just like resilience and some of the other sessions you've done. It's something that really pops up. Now, the current job market, as we are all very much aware, is classed as quite tight. It is opening up. However, there are not as many jobs and positions available at the moment as there were circa 12, 15 months ago. So Prospects, a leading graduate website, has announced that, the levels are getting back up, but in certain points in the last kind of 6 months or so, that vacancies were down about 60% to what they were on previous years. So having a strong online network can really help you get ahead of the competition and land that starting position in the world of work. As you then advance your career, this becomes even more critical. For example, someone that you may be connected with online may know about a job posting coming out on the horizon, which hasn't even been posted yet, and they may be able to put you in direct contact with the person who is hiring, for example. So it really can be critical to help you find your dream role. And we're going to kind of delve into this in a bit more detail in the latter section of this webinar. But if anyone says to you that there is no point to digital networking, I fundamentally disagree, because there's so many people and so many stories of those who have found jobs just by using LinkedIn. And again, we'll absolutely come to that a little bit later, but this is the fundamental reason why it should be on your agenda. The link onto that, and the next part to really kind of coincide with that, is whatever industry you're looking, or multiple industries you're looking at going into when you finish your studies, you have to stay up to date with the trends in the industry that you're looking to go into. Great example, if you're looking to go into technology, for example, you should be looking to connect to individuals in the field. And the reason you want to do that is going to enable you to see really key information related to what's going on in the industry, especially in technology. For example, companies are always buying one another. Someone's won a new contract. Think about how that could affect your potential employment prospects. More importantly as well, did you know, for example, 15% of total graduate job applications end up being rejected due to a lack of research? Are you even following the company that you're interested in joining, and also their competitors on LinkedIn, for example? Many of you won't be, and you're really missing a trick, because companies will literally ping out information daily, weekly, about what's going on with them, what's on their agenda, etc., etc. For me, as someone who works in recruitment and recruitment marketing, this is the sort of thing that really separates candidates when they go for an interview. It gives you so much more kudos, folks. As recruiters, I can't begin to tell you how we get so bored of having our recruitment website regurgitated back to us. It really is the bane of our existence. And this has got even worse with everything being online. You can literally see people, when you interview them via webcam, clicking on pages of websites and reading them back to us verbatim. So I work for Enterprise, and I don't know the Enterprise website word for word. I wouldn't expect you to either. So here it is, my hot take. In recruitment, we want to hire people who have a genuine interest in both our company, who you're applying for, but also the industry. Doing that additional research really pays off. Plus, it is so easy nowadays to stay up to date with streams, hashtags, and news feeds. The information literally gets plonked right in front of you. Really does. And it's all at your fingertips. It's so easy to do, but the amount of students we still interview, and we ask them about preparation, about research, about everything they've done, and they're just literally quoting the website. You can get so many more interesting nuggets, excuse me, by following the company's feed online, but also connecting with people who work for that company. Again, more on that in just a moment. Now, the final thing about, excuse me, why is networking important? And this is a different approach to it. It's for us, when we talk about networking, it's very much about being helpful. So are we networking for purely our own personal gain? E.g., I need to be connected with someone in particular. How can this person help me? Or are we using, are we using people to bridge the gap and introduce you, for example? So, let's say, for example, you've got an interview with one of my colleagues coming up, and you literally message me, hey Graeme, I've got an interview with Sophie or Laura, can you put me in contact with them? I'd like to ask them some questions before. It's very kind of one-way process. Or are we networking to help other people? And I think in the last 12 months, I've seen so much of this online, which is wonderful, which is what I love about online networking. So we've seen loads of people in the online space sharing people's LinkedIn profiles, saying, is there anyone I can help who's looking for a position? Can I help someone with their CV? Can I introduce you to someone? Is there someone in a company that you're looking to work for? People have been sharing posts all over the place. And there's so many nice stories of people who've landed employment because of that. So they're not networking for themselves, they're doing it to help other people. Again, this does align more to me because I work in recruitment, but I also used to work in technology recruitment. So I have lots of tech people in my networks. So lots of people reach out to me asking if we have any technical or IT graduate schemes at Enterprise. And when we've had those full, or we're not hiring for those, what I can then do is redirect them to other people that I know in the industry. So it's helping other people out. And I think for me, it feels really good to help people out. Taking the time, it only takes a few minutes. So throughout your career, as you progress, you're going to meet people from different walks of life, whether it's at events, whether it's barbecues, friends, family, and you never know when those networks can come in useful. And I've used that time and time again to help people out. And again, if I'm interviewing students and they're not a good match for what Enterprise are looking for, I'm then in a position to redirect them elsewhere as well. Sorry, please excuse me. So yeah, that is why networking should be on your agenda, absolutely. And there's some top reasons as to how you can gain and benefit from it. And just to think about it a little bit differently, it shouldn't always just be about yourself. So how does online networking link to your personal brand? So for me, it's very straightforward. Do first impressions matter? So when I look at this, the way you show up the image you project, the first impression that you create will ultimately inform people how you want to be treated. Whether it's in an interview setting, especially if it's via video, for example, whoever's interviewing you is going to be looking at not just the verbal communication, but the non-verbal communication. You know, what is your body language? What is your attire? What's your eye contact like, or lack thereof? Are you really listening? But also things such as the tone of your voice. Now, you may be thinking that, you know, that is not really fair. And also, do people actually really think about all of these things? Now, the old saying goes, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. It's also so true. But on the other side, unfortunately, so many of us still do. It's human nature to make perceptions about people based on first impressions. As we all know, maybe not quite at 9:18 on a Wednesday morning, our brains are immensely powerful. Yours definitely more powerful than mine. And they're filled with data points that then become our preferences for how we perceive others in that first encounter. So as humans, we take an image and object a situation. Our brains fill in the blanks based on what has often happened previously. So this approach is, in short, it's our brain's way of taking a shortcut. You know, taking a shortcut is the brain's way of conserving energy and ultimately being efficient. You know, to put this into some more context for you, a common occurrence of this you may have heard of is something called the halo bias, where often, you know, again, putting in additional context, if something is deemed beautiful by the viewer, it is also associated with being good. Beauty is associated with good in essence. If you think advertising is a great example for this, anyone who's ever watched any sort of aftershave perfume commercial advert can absolutely attest to that. So although the saying goes you shouldn't judge a book by cover, it still does happen. It really does. So first impressions do absolutely matter. So just please, please, please give it some consideration. Give it some consideration. When it comes to the personal branding piece, again, it's another one of these terms that gets branded around a load. You know, you need to build on your personal brand. I remember when I first started in employment, they said, oh, Graeme, you know, you need to work on your personal brand. And I was like, I have absolutely genuinely no idea what you mean. No idea what you mean. I'm not a brand, I'm just Graeme. So this is this whole concept of that everyone as individually is a brand. Us collectively on this call are also a brand. You're part of a wider brand, being part of your course and also the university as well. And I guess you could say, you know, even further as students, you're all part of a brand as well. So whether you're consciously building your brand or not, simply put, your personal brand is not only your intellectual, the visual and emotional impression people have when they think of you. That's a lot to take in at 9:20 or 9:21. So I like to simplify. I always like to simplify everything. Your personal brand is this. It's the summary of you that people have in their mind. Or the thing which absolutely scared the life out of me when someone said this previously, it's what people think or say of you when you are not in the room. That is your personal brand. Quite a scary thought, isn't it, on a on a Wednesday morning? Absolutely. What feeds into that? Often social media has a big influence on it. I'm not going to lie to you on that. So when it comes to social media, you have to really kind of think about this in perspective. So do not work on building a professional brand in the workplace and have your social media accounts tell you something different. The phrase that I like to use for this, ladies and gentlemen, is you are what you post. The analogy that works for me, apart from your post, is what would your grandma, grandfather say if they saw that post that you put up? My grandma is actually pretty cool. She is 91, but I think you can catch the drift. As many people find out, you can delete it, but it does leave a footprint. question we often get asked as graduate employers: do we look up your social media? The answer to this is sometimes, not all the time. I would love to say I have the time to look up everyone's social media, but I really don't. I really don't. More often, as a graduate employer, we don't seek out your social media. However, if you interact with our brand on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, we often may have a look around on your account, especially if you apply for a position with us. You know, have you ever cringed at a post that you wrote 5 years ago? Absolutely. Facebook memories, for me, I just feel are the absolute worst, the worst invention known to man, the absolute worst known to man. What I would say, though, is with more and more events being shifted online, I still feel a lot of people get the basics wrong. When it comes to online events, I think that people get it wrong time and time again. I think whether it's uni-based events or whether it's networking events through companies like Bright Network or Target Jobs, virtual internships, there are loads of platforms out there to use. I think that was probably one of the things I had to get to grips with first and foremost with this digital world is, you know, all the different platforms that universities use and making sure that they can work effectively. And this is just some advice for general kind of job interviews going forward. Make sure that, it sounds super obvious, I get this, but download the app and test the software in advance. If you've got an interview coming up, often companies have different versions of Microsoft Teams or Zoom, and if you have the most up-to-date version, sometimes it doesn't connect, and I've done this, and it's a real frustration. You can often test it in advance, so don't leave it just 2 minutes before your interview to log on. And make sure your computer's done all its security and system updates. I had this 2 weeks ago where I completely lost my rag with my computer because I had a presentation I had to do for an hour and a half, and 5 minutes before the presentation my computer came up with a hard restart which I couldn't get past, and it was absolute stress city. Don't put yourself through that. Don't put yourself through that. The other thing that we find a lot of people make the mistake of, both in interviews and in online networking events, is that wherever possible, try to have your camera at eye level. The whole point of this is it means that then you are able to look more directly into the camera. It's tricky to do, but if you can't have it at pure eye level, if you are using your phone, try to have it static. You need to rest it on something. A great example of this, and a top tip, I don't know if you can see this, but I have one of these which I got from IKEA. I think it was about £3, and it's great just as a really cheap phone stand. And it means that you can stand your phone up, nice little plug for IKEA there as well, and it just keeps things nice and straightforward. Because it honestly, you don't want to have vertigo. The amount of times we've interviewed people and they're holding their phone or they're moving around, it makes things incredibly. It makes me really queasy, really queasy. The other thing that a lot of people make the mistake of is lighting. The best tip that I've been given for this, for any sort of online event, is this: there should be more light in front of you than behind you. So going near a window really helps. As you can see here, it's cloudy in Edinburgh today, but I'm right near a window, and it makes a massive benefit to the quality of imagery that you project. You have to remember that it's harder for people to assess you online because they can't see your full body. Because when we're talking about verbal and non-verbal communication, the brain really struggles with depth, and especially depth perception in video platforms. So being able to have that better quality light really helps the brain and the person assessing you to assess your non-verbal communication better. And again, this sounds like a really obvious thing, but think about your connectivity. If you are able to have a hardwired connection, it is so much more stable than using Wi-Fi. It really is. And again, think about bandwidth. If you're in a shared house and you have an important event coming up, try wherever possible to, ask them if they would mind not streaming Netflix whilst you've got an important event coming up, just because when the bandwidth goes, you get all stuttery. And again, I found this at the very beginning of lockdown as well. It made such a difference to the quality of the connection that we had. So I guess a couple of things just to finalize on this, and when we're looking at building a skill set in digital networking, a few other things just to think about. You have to try and stay as focused as possible. There are so many distractions. Pets, don't get me wrong, I'm obsessed with dogs. I really want to get one. I can't get one until my girlfriend and me move into a house, but I love dogs. However, they are funny on calls, but we don't want to have dogs barking in the background. Notifications, there's nothing worse than being on an event and having someone constantly looking down, picking up their phone, texting. You've got to give people the attention. If you're an event, you have to be 100% there, otherwise don't be there at all. Again, if you're an event and people spend their time looking down like this, it's a sign that they're disinterested, bored. So yeah, don't multitask. If you're attending an event and you've deemed it important to go, you shouldn't be multitasking, sending emails at the same time. The other thing that I've seen as well is people muting others on calls. I found it quite funny the first time I saw it, but actually it's very rude and very improper. I've been on a call, someone was talking so much in an event that actually another member was just actually put them on mute, which please don't do that. It's really rude, really, really rude indeed. Now, the other thing that I would say that have really helped me throughout are something called the 3 E's. And the communication style is so important, whether you're on a video call or in a chat function. Whatever it is, if you're doing something online, any sort of event, you need to focus on the 3 E's, which are really straightforward: eye contact, enthusiasm, and engagement. Eye contact, we've talked about looking in the camera. Enthusiasm, people come across online as a little bit flatter than they do in person. So you have to kind of ramp up the enthusiasm a bit with the comms, with the hand gestures, just to make it a little bit more interesting. And then engagement, think about your choice of words. If you can use less words, always try to do so. Always try to do so. Now, the other thing that we get asked a lot, and some things that students find a little bit challenging, is connecting directly with employers in a networking session. Or, for a great example, let's say that you have an interview coming up with a company, you want to connect with either a recruiter of that company, or what you want to do is connect with maybe someone who works for that company as well. On that basis, what you need to be able to do is to send what I would call an epic intro LinkedIn message. So how do you go about doing that? Because it is tricky. It is tricky. But before we kind of even get to that bit, here's just a quick 101 on some top tips of how you can really boost your LinkedIn profile. So we actually do a whole nother session on this because you have to go into a lot of depth, and I don't have time to go through it today. But here's a couple of things to think about. Number one, is your LinkedIn profile all-star? Since Microsoft bought LinkedIn, they've gamified the heck out of it. So it'll give you a rating as to how good your profile is. Your LinkedIn profile needs to be all-star, and it will talk you through the steps that you need to take to do that. I must stress, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile now, you must 100% make it. If there is one thing you do from this session today, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, please, please, please create it. More and more employers use LinkedIn to search for candidates for roles and vacancies. It's the #1 place that we're going to look. If you're not on LinkedIn, we cannot find you, and ultimately we cannot headhunt you for the roles that we're looking to fill. And I'm sure many of you will be looking to find employment. So please, please, please make sure you have a profile set up on LinkedIn. And if you need any support on that, you can message me. You've got a wonderful career service who are here to 100% support you on that. So for me, LinkedIn needs to be up to date and relevant. Are people going to be able to find you? Do you have a strong headshot? And then, are you using a banner? Alongside that, you need to have a nice little summary about you, make it personal, what you're looking for, what your experience says. It can really be the profile summary of your CV, in short. You can also have a headline, and a headline is a great way for people to be able to find you, but also for you to be able to tell people what industry or type of work you are looking for. Many of you, for example, would have had lots of work experience working in, supermarket or pubs, but that's not necessarily what you want to do after university. if your profile doesn't say any different, you may well get emails from people who work for large pub chains, supermarkets, who are looking to fill vacancies because they see you have relevant work experience. That is something to think about. As mentioned, LinkedIn is a great way for graduate employers being able to find you. So do a really thorough audit of your own profile. If you would like me to have a quick scan of your LinkedIn profile, I'm more than happy to do so as well. More than happy to do so. So a really great takeaway that I'm just going to share with you next is some great things you can put in a LinkedIn message to really make it stand out. So here we go. Some things to bear in mind. Ready? This is a great LinkedIn message, and I'll absolutely share this with you afterwards as well. So, oh, here we go. So good that I've skipped over it already. There we go. So, hi Graeme. I'm a fourth year student studying at insert university now. Let's go for Heriot Watt University. I'm looking to secure a graduate role when I finish in May 2021. I attended your session at the whatever event it was, and I wanted to ask your tip to make my application stand out when applying to enterprise. I also agree that the American Office TV show absolutely rocks. Regards, Michael Scott. So, why is this a great LinkedIn message to send? I will tell you why. Know your target audience first and foremost. I work in recruitment. I have many people message me all the time. It's always nice to know what it is that they are looking for. Number two, don't use LinkedIn's default message setting. It makes you look a bit lazy, makes it look like you haven't put any thought into it. Some people have said it's like going on a dating website and just putting hi. Does it really work? Some people will say yes. A lot of people will say often not, because it's come across as lazy and you're not going to engage with that person. Very different context, but I think you get the point. It's all about how you brand yourself. Using the person's name, absolutely number one thing to do. Makes it nice and clear and concise. And again, tell them why you're messaging them and customize the message. On my LinkedIn profile, it mentions, just as a bit of summary text, that one of my favorite TV shows is The American Office. So the fact that if you send me a message like this, it really references that you've had a chance to look through my profile. And if I receive a message like that, I'm absolutely more likely to reply to someone than just someone who sends you a random connection request out of the blue. But what I would say is you have to think to yourself, some people spend ages upon ages about trying to be super clever crafting a LinkedIn message, opening message. You got to think to yourself, is it even really worth it? Are they, some people just won't even read it. Is that really a good use of your time? I would say no. So keep it nice and short and concise, but impactful like this. And the whole point of this message is to give people a really clear reason as to why you're messaging them and what it is that you're looking for, along those kind of lines as well. So for me, that is absolutely critical. Moving on from that, a few other things just to go through today. When it comes to the building the skill set in digital networking, there are common questions that come up time and time again. These are the classic questions that come up at so many events, so many events. What do you do? How are you finding today? What brings you here? Do you know XYZ person? These are commonly asked at all both online and offline events. And if you're going through to an assessment center, a virtual assessment center, or like a meet and greet with an employer, these come up time and time again. Bear in mind that in your professional life, the amount of times that people you will meet for the first time will open with their job title, and that for me is always a big no-no. It tells me, who you are, not what, it's not really that interesting, if I'm honest. Opening with the LinkedIn title, the job title, I don't know, I just find it a little bit uninspiring. You're much more than your job title. I always think is a much better way if you turn it around and answer the question as if someone's just asked you, what can you do for me? And if you noticed, when I introduced myself today, I didn't say I'm Graeme Butler and I work in recruitment marketing for enterprise. I said, my name's Graeme and my role is to help students launch their careers in operations management. You see, and that's, you see, that is much more personal. I mean, because everyone has a job title, whether you're a recent graduate or a CEO. I think to be authentic, you've got to make it about what you can do for them, make it personal, and make it be, beneficial. Be a bit different, because it's just a bit boring introducing yourself with your job title. Really, really boring. Really, really boring. So think about that. What is it? How can you help your classmates or your work colleagues? How can you make a difference? You're then going to be able to make that connection far faster and more effectively. But these questions on the left will come up time and time again, because they just do. So just have some nice little golden nuggets of things, and whatever you can do, try to avoid just talking about the bare minimums. What do you do? Think about how you can make it interesting, and just avoid jargon, because that happens time and time again. People just use boring jargon over and over again, which is related to their company. The amount of times that I've met people and they tell me their job title and it makes no sense, like an ethical hacking in superficial something or other, and I'm like, I'm really sorry, but I have no idea what that means. So think about how you can translate it, because people have all sorts of weird and wonderful job titles now. So think about that, how you can do that, and make it human. Bring the human element into it, and bring a bit of humor. I find, for me, works really, really well. So the last section today, I just wanted to look about a little bit about networking mindset. So for me, when it comes to networking mindset, the person I feel like we can learn the most from is the wonderful Gary Vee. And this quote I absolutely love, which is, give a little more than you take, give a little more to everyone, then you ask for in return, and see how quickly your situation changes. So how you approach any task has an impact on your mindset. To be great at networking, it's not just about leveraging new relationships, e.g. what's in it for me, but it's all about making some great long-term relationships that are win-win. And the way you do this is by being authentic and genuine. We've talked already about putting the phone down, not being on the phone whilst you're doing anything or engaging. Even if you take this in an offline setting, how many of you, when we go food shopping, for example, you've got the cashier at the desk, and what we're doing whilst they're putting our shopping through, we're on our phones, not paying any attention whatsoever at all. Smile at them. The amount, I promise you now, even if you just ask the cashier how their day's going, it can make a world of difference. Often they will just tell you when they finish their shift, but that's fine. But at the same point, just acknowledging them, I think, goes such a long way. As a great example. So my whole take on this is, give people your undivided attention, because so many people don't. Try wherever you can. If there's something that you have an interest in, I don't always want to use the word passion, because again, that's one of those words that everyone seems to overuse. But if there's something that you really love to do, or that you're really good at, share it with other people. It's intimidating at first, but people want to hear from their peers, whether it's something along photography, whether it's cooking, whatever it may be. Share it. Not everyone's going to like it, but honestly, there will be value to it. The other thing I would say is, some of you in the future, or maybe already, will go into the career of sales, because some would say we're all in sales, but just some of us haven't realized it yet. The ability to follow up in an online setting is so underrated. People say in sales all the time, under promise and over deliver. But how often do we really follow up sooner than we say we will, or provide more detail than the bare minimums? I get sales pitches all day, every day on LinkedIn from people trying to sell me recruitment services, software platforms, marketing, advertising, branding, you name it, because my job title is marketing. The amount of them who will message me once and then nothing more. And in that message, they'll say, oh, I'm really sorry to message you. And I think for me, even if a few of these people followed up more than once, it would make a big, big difference, because most salespeople don't. Most people don't at all. And on the point that I made, again, following on from that, as I've mentioned, is people love a matchmaker. And Gary Vee absolutely agrees with this. Are there two people who you know who could get a ton of value from meeting each other, connect them together. If they find that value, they'll always remember it, and it costs you absolutely nothing. And the other thing that Gary Vee is very famous for is sharing his ideas. Give your ideas away for free. This is a crazy idea, but he believes that everyone's going to love you for it, and 99% of the time people will be too lazy to act on it anyway. Isn't that mad that he literally gives all his ideas away as best possible, because people will look at it but they won't actually do anything about it because they're too lazy to act on it anyway. And that's where, pardon me, Gary Vee has his 51-49 analogy from. Give a little more analogy. It's not just about what's in it for you, it's about how you can help other people. And you know, we've talked about this in the last slide, but if you are trying to connect with people online, you're going to get setbacks. It happens all the time, whether you're trying to make new connections, whether you're trying to sell a product or a service, or connect with people for the first time. You have to persist. You have to persist. There's all these great stories out there in the world of authors, entrepreneurs being turned down multiple times, but the people who are successful are those who keep going. If there's something that you truly have an interest in and want to follow, you have to persist. It's not going to happen first and foremost. And just remember, one of the best bits of advice I've ever been given in business is to practice humility. So what this means is, even if you know everything, even if you're the top professor or the most skilled person in the world, people aren't going to help you if they don't like you. So whether you have got the best grade in class, whether you've achieved something other people have, in short, still be able to show humility about it. You know, you don't have to brag about it. Let your results speak for themselves. Be proud of your results. I absolutely do encourage you to be proud of your results, but you know, just don't be arrogant about it, because I've worked with this as well, and the best salespeople, best communicators, people I've worked with are not those who brag about it. It's the age-old saying goes, if you want to take it into pure monetary terms, those people who have loads of money, and what we call real money, not borrowed money, don't have to go around bragging about it all day, every day online, because it's sitting nice and safely in investments and banks. They don't have to buy ostentatious goods to show everyone. So think about that. Are you the type of person who's able to practice humility? And this is definitely something that I've embraced and changed over the time. And just taking that time to listen makes such a big difference to people. And then just to kind of wrap up, the way you become credible in networking is being able to have a little bit of knowledge about many, many different things. So to be credible when speaking with anyone in an online digital setting, especially if you're going for an interview, but just in general, these are the sort of things that are going to be able to set you apart. Do you have knowledge on specific industries, companies, departments, positions, people that are interviewing you, for example? This is just a great model to use before you go for an interview. Even if, I promise you now, even if you just spent 10 minutes researching these 5 topics before going for any interview, you'll blow everyone else out of the water on the questions about company background and research, because no one does it. You know, no one ever asks in interviews, tell me about the size of the department, what's the team like, how does it interact with different levels? The person that you're being interviewed by, have you done any research on them? Can you find out about their career history? When it gets to the end of an interview, can you say, oh, you know, look, I had a quick look at your LinkedIn profile and I can see you've done the position that I'm looking to do. Tell me about that. What can I find out about it? This goes beyond. And I think for me, again, a tip that a lot of graduates don't make is, let's say, I'm going to keep it really simple and really granular. Let's say you want to work for Enterprise as a graduate, as many people do, as we are a Times Top 50 employer. There are thousands of graduate trainees on LinkedIn. If I was going for a job with Enterprise, the first thing I'd do is I'd go on LinkedIn, I'd go to the region that I'm looking to find a job in, I would connect with one of them and say, hey, tell me about your job. What do you do? What do you like? What do you find challenging? Do you have any tips for me going for an interview? They will help you because they are brand advocates, but people just don't do this. And that's the inside knowledge that really sets you apart from job interviews. It really, really does. So understanding the individual, the position, the department, how it fits in with the wider context of the company. So at the start of this session, I said to you that I'll give you a nice, easy way to get all this great content that we shared today going forward. And the way you do it is very straightforward. On the screen now, I've just put up a QR code. What I'm also going to do is just pop the link in the chat as well. So I've put the link in the chat there as well. If you click on that link and just pop in your details, after today, you're going to get a full run through of all the content that we've shared, along with that great message. Alongside that, you're also entered into our competition for all students who attend our sessions to win £50 worth of high street vouchers for a charity, well, for yourself as well as a charity donation for your choice. And of course, you're going to stay in contact with us on all other events coming up, as well as jobs and internships as well. So please do scan that QR code and you'll be able to get access to all the content that we shared today and stay in contact going forward as well. And of course, you can find me on LinkedIn as well. So that is me talking. I'm very aware that I've now spoken for 48 minutes, which is quite a long time. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have on anything we've covered, or anything to do with recruitment, internships, jobs, whatever it may be, because I've worked in this field for far too long now, and I'm used to answering questions on any different topics. So anything that you have questions-wise, happy to answer it all.
Can I just jump in there, Graeme? Say thank you for all those amazing tips. I have taken reams of notes here, so we'll definitely be passing on a lot of this wisdom to students. But I also had lots of questions as well. And one thing that came to mind was you were talking about the LinkedIn message, and thank you for sharing that example message, because I think that's incredibly helpful, because people don't know how to get started.
Yes.
But I think a big thing is the fear of nobody responding. So how do you suggest, how do you deal with that fear and actually putting yourself there and sort of having a presence?
Yeah, I guess I look at it from a different approach. I just assume that people are, and maybe I just look at things in the worst case scenario. I just assume that people aren't going to respond. A great example would be, I'll share this with you. So I headhunt students for our graduate program at Enterprise, and the average response rate for a headhunter on LinkedIn getting a response is about 20%, for example. My response rate at the moment, which I've worked really hard at, I have about a 55 to 60% response rate on LinkedIn. How I got to that, try some different messages out. Don't be afraid to fail. Again, I think it's like with all these things, you try some different things out. And I think when you're messaging employers, you are going to get those setbacks, and some people just won't reply. It's the same with emails. The amount of people who don't reply to emails, which is mad. I mean, I read every email that anyone's ever sent me in a work context. I always read. So you have to be a bit brave, but you also just have to assume that a lot of people won't reply. But that's fine. And I think if they don't reply once, leave it a bit of time. I would say normally leave it around kind of 7 days, because not everyone checks LinkedIn on a daily basis. What I do find a little bit frustrating sometimes is that students will message, and if you haven't replied to them within 24 hours, they'll message again, which does actually can frustrate some employers, because you have to think from the other person's point of view. They have a day job, they're busy, etc. as well, but you also then have to give them a reason to respond to you, and so make it relevant. So a great example would be a few messages I've received this week which are really, really, I guess, unrelevant to me. So I've had 4 messages this week. One of them was from a student saying, I'm really interested in going into oil and gas. Can you help me with my CV? Another one said, I'm looking for jobs in public relations. Can you help me get a job in that? As great examples. Now, I'm always happy to help people out, but because if they'd actually taken any sort of time to look at my profile, they would see that I don't have any experience working in those sections,
Mm-hmm.
or that's not my area of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
So then what I assume is that that person is just messaging hundreds and hundreds of people trying to ask for help. So as much as I'll be polite and I'll message them back and say, look, I'm very sorry, I'm not the best person to help you. And if there is someone that I'll know, you have to make it as relevant as possible. You have to make it as relevant as possible. So if you are connecting with people online, think about the relevancy piece and think about what you can do, because, you know, great example, if you're messaging us about jobs and opportunities, we'll be getting back to people a lot quicker. If it's something very unrelated, you're less likely to have that success, I would say.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Thank you. So keep it relevant and be considerate as well.
Yes, no, absolutely. And think about people's time.
Yeah.
And also, if you message someone at 3 a.m. in the morning on LinkedIn, we find that really weird. I can't say we don't, because we really do. It's like when we receive job applications, Sarah, at 4 in the morning. I just think, well, why are people writing job applications at 4 a.m.? That's still a bit bonkers to us. Unless, of course, you're far afield in other countries. We don't mind that so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's a question there as well about you know, sort of having to work even harder to network effectively online, I suppose, as opposed to offline. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think, if I'm honest, if you look at like a pure networking event per se, which is a group of people getting together, it's really hard to do it in an online setting. Any of us who've been in any sort of group work or done anything with more than 6 people online, it often just descends into chaos because people end up talking over each other. So I find it often takes longer. Although the accessibility is there, it's harder to make those genuine connections. I think it is harder to make those genuine connections because, you know, in recruitment, I would often go to loads of conferences in person, and you would meet loads of people and you'd swap business cards and you do it that way, and that doesn't happen. I think from a student perspective, careers fairs is a great example. The engagement that employers have at careers fairs now versus in person is not the same. I really don't think it is, and I think there's lots of employers who are finding it a big challenge. So yeah, I would completely agree, Keith, that you do have to work harder, because it's how you can make those authentic and genuine connections is much more challenging. It really is, and that's why you really have to ramp up. You really have to put the communication as strong as possible, and you do have to work harder. You really do, because it is a big challenge, I would say.
Can I just pick up on what you were saying about careers fairs? Because actually we have the Scottish Graduate Fair coming up next week, and if you haven't signed up for that, it's on the 2nd of June, so please do go to Grad Futures and you'll get all the information there. There are a lot of employers attending. And yourselves will be there, and and so, you know, that's fantastic news for graduates sort of currently coming out. But how, sort of knowing that there's so many employers that they might want to talk to, and knowing that the employer's time is limited, how do you make the most of that interaction when you meet in that particular sort of careers fair scenario?
So this is a great point, and I've had a look at the lineup for this careers fair next week. There are loads and loads of which is wonderful. There is great opportunity. Now, there is no way that you're going to be able to go and see everyone, and you won't want to go and see everyone, because not every company will be for you. There is some great signposting on it. So what I would probably do is I would try to pull some employers together based off of industry or type of roles that they offer. That said, as well, a lot of the employers will have really nice takeaways for you from that. They'll have PDFs that they can share with you on the day. They have great content on their stand that you can have a look and interact with. So if you want to get the most out of the fair, you're probably not going to like this response, but what you need to do is you need to spend probably an hour. If you can commit to an hour of your time and just make a short list, you know, if there's employers that already grab your attention, think about that. And there can be the ones that you can go and see first, but there'll be loads of great employers there that you probably even haven't heard of. you know, you probably haven't heard of, and you can go and look at their stand and just have a little browse of their content. What I would say is this: if you can make a great first impression at the careers fair, often the employers there will give you the option to fast track your application for their graduate or intern opportunities, or they'll invite you to other exclusive events going forward as well. So for me, think about some great questions that you can ask the employers in advance. So when I say great questions, I don't just mean going to the stand and saying, what do you guys do? I'm saying, think about that you've done a very small bit of research, even if you've had a little understanding of the program. You know, for example, Enterprise's graduate program is very broad. It covers customer service, sales, marketing, HR, finance, all in 1 year, right? So a great question to ask us, or ask me if you see me next week, is, hey Graeme, I can see that your graduate program is quite broad. Can you tell me a little bit more about what it's like on a day-to-day basis? Or if all else fails, graduate programs are fundamentally designed, folks, to give you a progression to somewhere else in the company. Ask them about what the progression opportunities like at XYZ company, because that's a nice broad question. And at least that'll be a bit different to, what do you guys do? Or do you have any jobs at the moment, which we hear a lot. So again, you've got to think to yourself, how can you differentiate yourself in a really positive way? And I would say this: every single person you meet at the careers fair, do this as a task. Every person you meet at the careers fair, connect with them on LinkedIn. Connect with them on LinkedIn and send a little message just to say, great to meet you at the careers fair. I found XYZ really, really useful. Do that, because that will make a big, big difference. Big difference indeed. And Keith has very kindly put the link to the careers fair. Please sign up if you haven't already. It is, I promise you now, this is an absolute plug. It is the best virtual careers fair in Scotland that you will attend for the whole year, just by the pure amount of employers that are there, the breadth of employers that are there. It's the best one that employers do from a pure student perspective, and you'll get so much out of it if you do it. Please do attend. Do attend.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing those tips, Graeme, because I can also sort of echo that if you follow Graeme's advice, you will make such a positive impression, and you will stand out amongst all the other many applicants that are there. There seems to be a slight problem with the link to the fair. Not sure what's going on there, but we will email out the link for this recording and also the link to the careers fair afterwards, and we'll get that checked on Grad Futures. So you will get all of that information. That's us out of time, Graeme. There's so much more we could talk about. But thank you so much for your input today, and we're absolutely delighted to have you along. And thanks for your time, and we will be following on from this session at 10:15 with a session on the graduate job search, when we'll be saying a little bit more about the careers fair as well, and picking up on some of the points that Graeme has made this morning. So thank you all for attending, and look forward to speaking to you again soon.
All right, no problem. Great to see you all, and anything else you need, you can find me on LinkedIn, and make sure you scan the QR code so we can stay in contact. And I'm looking forward to seeing all your great introductory LinkedIn messages come up on my profile in the next day or so. You can use me as your test subject for that. All right, thanks, mate.
That's great. Lots of appreciation there in the chat.
Have a great one.
Thanks, Graeme, and goodbye, everyone.
Bye.